Over the years I've made quite a few videos that feature Nixie tubes, and I've got a number of Nixie clocks around the house. They're one of my favourite things, and in the last few months, with increasing regularity, people have got in touch to ask, am I going to do anything that features Lixie displays? Now, Lixie is a name that's recently been coined for edge-lit displays. These have been around for a long time. If you've ever seen the 1964 James Bond film Goldfinger, the bomb in there uses these edge-lit displays. And they do bear a bit of a resemblance to Nixie tubes in the way the digits are already formed and they're just lit at the appropriate time. I believe this Lixie name originates from Conor Nishijima in the US, who sells his modern-day take on these edge-lit displays online, with the idea that you link them up with an arduino and you program it and it will display whatever you want on those digits. I'm looking for something a little bit more ready-made than that, because all I want is a clock. So I went back to the source. The company that really inspired Conor was a German company that's been selling these kits for years, and they sell two different versions of their clock edge-lit display kit. They call these Cronixes, and there's a small one, Cronixie-S, and then there's a medium one, Cronixie-M. Presumably at some point there'll be a large one as well. If you're interested in the size difference, well, the digits are highlighted in that red box at the top there, and then the overall size is down the bottom. So that's the smaller one, and then there's the larger one of the two, and that's the one that I'm going to be putting together in this video. I always start these projects with a strong feeling of trepidation, because I know my skills at putting things together are very limited, and I hope there's nothing in here that's beyond my abilities, especially since I've paid approximately £100 for it. However, once it's out of the box, this one looks quite manageable. These are the numbers. They're all on acrylic. They've all got protective coating on them. That's why they're blue, and that'll be quite a job to get that off later. Now, we've got three more panels there, which go on this control box here, which has some screws to attach it all together. You can see we've got a battery on there. On the bottom, we've got a USB, which is the power supply for the whole thing. And then that connects up to the display board, which is at the back there. The numbers are lit from below by these surface mount RGB LED panels. There are 20 LEDs, 2 for each digit, and these panels are then all linked together by soldering wires between the 3 connectors on each end. Now, whilst I've got 5 panels here, there are a total of 6. There's one already installed on the base of this board, which is made up of 2 pieces of MDF sandwiched together and covered with a gold film. At this end, we've got the wire coming out of it, and that's attached to the first board. And as you can see there, it's got an arrow on it to show the alignment, and then you just put the rest of the boards on with the arrow pointing in the same direction. So to complete this kit, you do need to have a few things of your own. To start with, you'll need a soldering iron and some solder and some wire to bridge the gaps between these boards. Now, the first board is already installed on there, which gives you a good example as to how to install the rest of them, which order to put those screws and bolts in, and you just copy that one and work your way down. Another tool that will be useful is a small hex screwdriver to tighten up the bolts on the bottom of the board, as well as something to tighten those nuts on the top, although you can only do it on alternate ones, because once you've got one on there, you'll find the other one is so close to it, it really fouls it as you try and twist it around. It's a bit of a design flaw that they could have spaced them out a little bit more sensibly, but after a bit of fiddling around, I managed to get all the boards seated in the right direction, so it's just a matter of soldering these together now. You'll need to provide your own wire for this purpose, and it needs to be solid core wire as well, ideally, because you're going to be soldering very small pieces of this together. I've cut all these identical lengths and stripped off the ends of them, and now I just have to put solder on each of those connectors in advance, and then I can join them all up with those wires. I'm sure there's other ways of doing this. Perhaps you could, if you had 3 hands, do everything together, but I've put the solder on first. That's how I'm doing it anyway, and then I'm just going to attach up the wires to those and then spin the thing round and then put them on the other side. With them being solid core, of course, you can bend them into positions and they'll retain that position as well, so you can push them all flat afterwards, and they're barely noticeable on there. It's perhaps not the perfect job, but I think I've got that right. We'll find out in a moment when I plug it in and we see if they all respond. So I've got it plugged in to a 5-volt power supply in the wall, so I just need to put the 5-volt into the bottom of here in the USB socket. And that's just a normal sort of charger plug that I'm using. So now I've got that plugged in, we can see, yep, every single one of those is lit. So despite my soldering being a little bit subpar, it seems like I've got it all connected together. So now it's the difficult part. say difficult, it's time consuming. I've got to take all the protective film off these. They've got protective film on because you can see the scorch marks on there. That's why they put the film on, so it doesn't scorch the acrylic, it just scorches the protective coating. But taking this stuff off, while it looks quite therapeutic, it just takes a heck of a lot of time, and there's a lot of digits there to do as well. All the numbers are etched into the acrylic on one side. You can feel it as you rub your finger over it. All the digits apart from 0 are etched on the front only, apart from the 0 which is etched on the reverse. I think that's just because of the way they line up once you put them into the base. I found it easier to put all the numbers of the same sort together, because then when you were peeling the tape off, you kind of got into a bit of a rhythm on that particular number. It made it a little bit quicker, although it still took me about an hour to get all that tape off. But now it's off, we can put those digits into the clock. So you start with the 0 at the front, and then you work your way up 1 through to 9. Now they do mention in the instructions to make sure you clean off any fingerprints. It's quite important because they do show up once the light goes through these. And I'll admit I didn't really do a very good job of that, as you'll see later on, but it's just a matter of taking them out and cleaning them again to get rid of any smudges. In the meantime, I'm going to put this controller together. It's pretty much already assembled, although there are just a couple of extra bits of acrylic I have to attach to it, to the top and the bottom, so that the circuit board isn't exposed. And the boards are cut out in the relevant places, so you can't put them in the wrong order. They just slot over the top, make a little bit of a sandwich of that circuit board. It comes with the screws for that, so it's just a matter of putting 4 screws in the bottom, flipping it over, putting the other board on the top, and then putting the remaining screws in there. And then the final part is putting the control wheel on the top of there, and we're ready to go. So it's just a matter of plugging this into that power supply, plugging it into the clock, dimming the lights, and we'll have a look at it. So there you go. What do you think of that? I've got to say, I'm really impressed with the way this has turned out. It's much better than I was expecting it to be. Those digits are so large and bright and sharp and clear, and the way they move off into the distance as the digit increases. There's a whole 3D effect to this, which won't come across on this video. Now in Nixie tubes you do get stacked digits, but the digits are much closer packed together, so the effect isn't as pronounced, and also those digits tend to move back and forth a little bit as they go through the numbers. Whereas with this one, they start at the front and move their way to the back, which is a much pleasanter effect to look at. And speaking of things to look at, just take a look at this. This is known as party mode, and it's a feature you can switch on or off in the menus. I'll be showing you the settings in a moment. But this happens every couple of minutes. When you reach the top of a minute, you'll get one of these animations played, and there's a wide variety of these. I don't know if I've seen the same one twice yet. I can imagine people getting tired of them and switching them off. After all, they do take up to perhaps 20 seconds or so. But before that happens, they are entertaining to watch. You can see this one here, how it's emphasizing the 3D effect of the numbers as it's pivoting in the middle. In this video I've been demonstrating the clock in subdued lighting, because if I was to put my studio lights on it, they would overpower it. However, if you were to put this clock in a normally lit room, it would be visible, although I've got to say it would look better in slightly subdued lighting. And as the instructions advise, you'll definitely want to make sure those acrylic panels are sparkling clean, because as those two LEDs shine up through the legs and the base of them, they will make any fingerprints really noticeable. Now, because this is a German product that I imported from Germany, the operation instructions are also in German. There's a version of the assembly instructions in English. I'll talk more about those later though. But as far as the operation goes, you're just left with this sheet that was included inside the box. So I've translated it into English. I've put a version of that in the video description text box if you want to read through it. But I'm going to talk you through it now, and it does take quite a few minutes to go through all these options. Right, so let me talk you through the settings. It's all accessible by this controller here. We've got the option to spin it in either direction, click it down, or hold it down to select various things. So I'll start off with the time display that we've got on here. If I spin the wheel on here, you can see we can select different colours on there. We can spin it in both directions to go through the options. You see there was a multicoloured one there, but I'll keep it on this white one just because it's nice and clear. Now, if I tap the button, that displays the date. Just for a couple of seconds it goes back to the time. You can't keep the date on there permanently, it just shows momentarily. However, once you're in the date mode, again you can spin that wheel, you can choose what colour you want the date display to be. So if I just choose something sort of quite bright there, like that pink. So now we've got a white time, pink date. Now behind each of these are various settings. To access those, you hold down the button and you can see that 0 on the left there. If I spin through, I've got a total of 10 options there from 0 through to 9 that I can select. I'll show you what those are in a second, but I'll just drop out of this menu. To do that, I'd hold down the button again. If I go into the date and then hold it down, you can see it's blue on the left there, and there's a total of 4 options there, 0 through to 3. I'll show you what those are in a moment, but we'll go back to these ones here. So I'll hold it down, and 0 is the brightness. So you can see we've got 0 on the left there, lit up, and then the option on the right. Now, we can go all the way up to 15 on the brightness, so I'll choose 15, and we'll drop back out by holding it down, and that's quite a bit brighter for me. The camera's aperture, exposure, or whatever, will be adjusting that down, but that's pretty bright. Now, if I go into 0 again and put it all the way down to the minimum, now I can barely see that. I doubt you could either. However, there's another option. We can choose 0, and that is auto brightness. There's a sensor in here that picks up on the brightness in the room. So if I was to turn on more lights, the display will get brighter. If I was to turn them all off, it gets very dim. Suitable for having in a bedroom even, because once all the lights are out, it is quite a dim display. It wouldn't disrupt your sleep. However, because of what I'm doing here with filming it, I'm going to put it all the way up to 15 so we can see this nice and clearly. Right, now let's go look at some of those other settings. We'll go through to number 1. Now 1 is this beep you might be able to hear in the background. This is on or off. Now 1 is on, 0 is off. I'll leave it on. Setting number 2, set the time. It's 10:59 at the moment. If I wanted to, we can spin the hours here. Now notice it's a 24-hour clock. I'll just move it on a bit, 11:01, and notice the seconds at the end here. I can select those in 5-second intervals. And then hold it down, and that's the time we've got there. Now if I just move on, number 3, same thing, but setting the date. Day, month, year, and that's the actual date that I'm shooting this at the moment, so I'm quite a bit ahead of myself. Number 4, alarm on or off. So 1 is on, 0 is off, so set the alarm on. Number 5, what time do you want the alarm? So we'll set it to 11:03, I think. I don't know if we've gone past that now. Let's just have a look. No, we've still got a minute left. Now where were we up to? We've done alarm number 6. Now this is whether you want the date to automatically display or not. If you put it to on, the date will appear every minute or so, and if you set it off, the date won't appear automatically at all. You'd have to press the button to select it. Let's just wait a few seconds and we'll be able to hear what that alarm sounds like. So I'll just fast forward in time a little bit. So there we go. Now the alarm sounds for a minute, and I haven't found any easy way to stop it sounding. If you tap it, you just get the date coming up. If you hold it down, you get into the menus, but if you hold it down again, the alarm's carrying on. The only way really to stop it is either to wait a minute or to go into option number 4, which is alarm on or off, and turn the alarm off. Okay, let's have a look at another one. We've got, where have we got to now? We've got up to 7 now. This is a countdown timer. So if I set this to a minute, which is the minimum amount of time, and then press the button, you can see it starts to count down. So again, we'll just wait a few seconds. I'll fast forward in time and you'll be able to hear what happens when the timer expires. Right, so that's the timer. Oops, hold it down, move on to number 8, I think we're up to now. That's the stopwatch. So again, if I just tap that, it will start counting up. Tap again to stop. Hold down to get out of the menu. And then finally, the last option, number 9, That's party mode on or off, and that's the animated displays with multicolours. So we could just pick number 1 to turn that on, and then every couple of minutes, or it seems to vary between either 1 or 2 minutes, you'll get a display on there when it reaches the top of the minute. So I'll just wait a second, we'll see if it comes on this minute or if it's going to be the next one. Right, so not this minute, so it's going to be 11:07 presumably when it appears. And there we go. Now while this is displaying, we can't press any of these buttons, we have to wait for the animation to finish. But once it's finished, I'll show you the system parameters menu. That was the one that was behind the date. So there we go. Right, so we're in the date mode, hold it down. 0 is time offset. If you find the times running a little bit fast or slow, adjust it by a number of seconds a day here. You could go all the way up to 10 seconds. I'll leave it as 0. And that adjusts, and apparently that updates at 2 o'clock. But we'll change to number 1 because that is whether you wanted it to be plus or minus seconds a day. 1 is plus, 0 is minus. Doesn't matter which way we're leaving that because we set the previous one as 0. Right, number 2, minimum brightness at auto brightness. So when you've got auto brightness turned on, you've got up to 30 you can select here as the minimum brightness you want it to go down to. Again, if you had it in a bedroom and you found that the display was too dim when all the lights are off, you could select a little bit brighter in here. But I'll just leave that. I don't know. Let's put it at 2. That's the default. And then finally, number 3, the last setting. This is called slot machine, on or off, and this is the display randomly moving through the digits. I'm not too sure how often it does it, because when we've got the other display on, the party mode, I think the two things might be sort of crossing over with each other, but I'll leave that switched on. So there you go, that is all the settings. Now, of course, this is a programmable device. You've got access to the pins in here, and if you knew what you were doing, you could get it to do additional things, but that is just what it does out of the box once you've put the kit together. Now inside here you'll see we've got a button cell. It's holding the time and date, etc., and the settings are also held in the device. So if you were to unplug it and then plug it back in, it carries on from where you left off. It shows the version number of the software when you first put the power in, so this is presumably version 1.4 or 0.14. Anyway, that was that, and then we're back to the time again. Now this, when I got it, was sent to me from Germany, of course, and once I put the kit together, put the power in, the time came on with German time, which was plus an hour, so all I had to do was take an hour off that. But they'd already set the time and the date in this, which I thought was nice, and of course it demonstrates the fact that it holds a time for quite a while as well. Now, going back to the assembly of the kit, as we saw at the beginning, it wasn't particularly complicated, just a little bit time consuming, but the instructions that I got with mine confused me initially because a lot of the things in there weren't applicable to the kit that I got. For example, it said that I was to peel off the gold foil. Well, the gold foil was already on the MDF, and I was thinking, well, why am I peeling it off? But I think it meant applying it to the MDF. But also it mentions things like position MDF part A under part B. There are no diagrams, and the two parts were already attached together. It also tells me to attach the wires to the very first board, but they were already attached to that, and it also says to solder wires to the controller, as well as put the battery in the controller and then put the controller into the acrylic. Well, it's already in there with the wire already attached. So it seems at some point they've updated the kit but haven't updated the instructions that go along with it. You can see from this picture that's from their website, the board for the controller was separate to the acrylic, as was the gold foil and the wires and things. You had to put all that together. So they've made the kit easier to do now. I'd imagine people had problems getting that gold foil just right, and there were a few issues with which way around you orient things. So the updated kit is much easier to do. It's just you might want to cross a few things out in the instructions. Don't worry if not everything applies to the kit that you've got. So to wrap up, speaking as someone who's a little bit obsessed with clocks and unusual types of displays, as well as being a person who enjoys putting kits together, as long as they aren't too complicated, this has been a perfect project for me. I'm over the moon with the results. It's outperformed my expectations, and there's always that sense of accomplishment you get when you put something together yourself and it works. The things you need to put this together are basic soldering skills, along with your own soldering iron and solder, some thin solid core wire, a hex screwdriver, and plenty of patience when unwrapping those numbers. And to use it, you'll need to provide a USB-A to mini B lead and a standard USB power supply, for example a phone charger. More advanced users could always reprogram the kit, and you might even choose to build your own case around it. The party mode is something that isn't suitable for everyone, and I must stress you don't have to activate it. And I should say some of those animations can get a bit intense. In fact, if you suffer from photosensitive epilepsy, just look away for the next 10 seconds. If you are still watching, you'll see how this one could get old pretty quickly. Now, if you've decided that you want to get hold of one of these Cronixie kits, if you look in the video description text box, you'll find affiliated links to the 2 Cronixie kits on eBay. You'll also find that English language version of the operating instructions, and I'll also put a link to the German language website of the kit manufacturers. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.